Imagine waking one day to a world without noise. Your phone is still. The constant hum of traffic outside your window has faded. Even the chatter of your own mind, the endless monologue of worries, plans, and half-remembered conversations, has gone silent. For the first time, you hear nothing but the rhythm of your breath and the slow, steady beat of your heart. At first, the silence is unsettling. You are so accustomed to distraction, to the storm of stimulation, that stillness feels like suffocation. You reach instinctively for the noise, a message, a memory, a plan for the future. But none arrives. The silence persists, and as it deepens, something stirs inside you, something both terrifying and strangely magnetic. Why do you resist this silence so fiercely? Why does it feel dangerous when all you have ever claimed to want, peace, love, success, seems to lie on the other side of it? You have been taught that chasing leads to fulfillment. You chase love through gestures, words, and endless attempts to prove your worth. You chase success through effort, ambition, and relentless motion. You chase peace by trying to control your environment, to silence external chaos, to escape discomfort. But what if the paradox is this? The more you chase, the further these things run. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Consider what that means in this moment. What if the very noise you generate, your restless thoughts, your compulsive striving, is the unconscious at work, dragging you away from the very things you crave? What if silence is not absence at all, but the doorway through which love, success, and peace finally enter? Think of a lake. When storms batter its surface, the water churns with mud and waves. Look into it then and you see nothing but distortion. But when the storm ends, when the surface becomes still, suddenly the lake reflects the mountains, the sky, even the smallest bird above with perfect clarity. Your mind is that lake. In chaos, nothing can settle. In silence, everything appears. And yet, how many of us dare to live this way? Instead, we cling to noise. We surround ourselves with endless conversations, scrolling screens, background music, busy schedules. Not because we love them, but because silence would force us to face ourselves. What old griefs, what repressed desires, what shadows might rise from the depths if the noise stopped? Freud would say you fear silence because it opens the door to the unconscious, the fears and memories you've locked away. Jung would tell you that silence stirs the shadow, the hidden parts of you that you deny. Neuroscience would remind you that your brain, addicted to dopamine jolts, resists stillness like withdrawal from a drug. And philosophy, Schopenhauer, Sartre, Nietzsche would whisper that silence confronts you with your freedom, your suffering, your meaninglessness, and demands that you build meaning for yourself. So here is the paradox that unsettles everything you thought you knew. The very thing you run from is the key to everything you run after. But let me ask you, what if silence could make you magnetic? What if love moved toward you without effort? Success flowed naturally into your life, peace settled into your being, not because you demanded them, but because you stopped pushing them away. This is the great question. Are you willing to surrender noise, the false comfort of chasing, for the terrifying clarity of silence? The answer is not simple, nor is it comfortable, but it may be the only way to unlock the life you seek, and to understand why we must descend deeper into the hidden problem itself, into the psychological and philosophical roots of our resistance to silence. Why is silence so unbearable when it is the very medicine the soul craves? Why do we fill every moment with noise? Conversations, screens, obligations, even our own racing thoughts, rather than risk a few minutes of stillness. The hidden problem is not that silence is empty. The hidden problem is that silence is full of everything we have refused to face. Freud called the unconscious a vast storehouse of repressed emotions and forgotten traumas. For him, silence is threatening because it weakens the defenses that keep these forces buried. When you sit in stillness, the ego loses control. Memories rise. Desires you judged unacceptable surface. Anger, grief, shame all knock at the door. Your mind resists not because silence is meaningless, but because it is too meaningful. It is the gateway through which the repressed demands recognition. Carl Jung deepened this insight. He spoke of the shadow, the part of yourself you deny, hide, or reject. The more you ignore it, the stronger it becomes, shaping your life in secret. In noise, the shadow can be hidden, but in silence it stands before you. To meet it feels like looking into a mirror you cannot turn away from. This is why Jung insisted that growth requires confronting the shadow. Until you do, you will chase endlessly, blaming fate, never realizing that it is your disowned self pulling the strings. Yet the problem runs deeper than the unconscious. Cognitive psychology shows how the very structure of thought resists silence. Consider the default mode network of the brain, which generates constant chatter when the mind is not focused externally. It replays past regrets, rehearses future anxieties, constructs stories about who you are. You mistake this noise for identity, but in truth it is just a loop. When silence interrupts, the loop weakens. And if the loop weakens, the fragile sense of self you've built on it feels like it may collapse. This is why silence feels dangerous. It threatens the illusion of who you think you are. Behavioral psychology explains the addiction to noise in yet another way. Our culture trains us to seek rewards, approval, success, validation, through constant action. The brain's dopamine system thrives on intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that makes gambling addictive. Every notification, every new goal, every external sign of progress is a maybe reward that keeps you hooked. But silence offers no quick dopamine hit. In fact, the first taste of stillness often feels like withdrawal. Your mind screams, do something, check something, move. And so you flee back into distraction. But where does this training come from? From society itself. Aldous Huxley warned that modern civilization would enslave not through oppression, but through distraction. He foresaw a world where people would beg for their own chains, so long as those chains came wrapped in pleasure and noise. Today, his vision is reality. Attention is the most valuable currency, and silence is the enemy of a system that feeds on it. A quiet mind cannot be manipulated. A silent heart does not buy endlessly. The economy of noise requires that you fear stillness. Philosophy exposes the problem in yet another light. Schopenhauer believed that human life is defined by desire, an endless striving that can never be satisfied. Silence interrupts this striving, showing you the futility of craving. But instead of liberation, many feel terror. Without striving, who am I? Sartre echoed this in his existentialism. Silence reveals freedom, and freedom is unbearable. In noise, you can blame the world for your suffering. In silence, you face the truth that meaning is not given but must be created. And this responsibility terrifies. Even neuroscience confirms the difficulty. Silence activates the parasympathetic nervous system, lowering stress and allowing the brain to repair itself. Yet most people cannot tolerate this, because their nervous systems are conditioned to live in fight or flight. Trauma plays a role here. Gabor Mate has shown how unresolved wounds create restless energy that resists stillness. To sit in silence is to risk re-experiencing the pain your body has carried for years. And so you keep moving. Do you see the pattern? At every level, personal, cultural, biological, noise is both shield and prison. It shields you from facing the unconscious, the shadow, the trauma, the freedom of your own existence. But in doing so, it imprisons you in endless chasing. Restlessness, addiction, and exhaustion. And here lies the great irony. The very thing you fear, silence, is the only thing that can set you free. But before we understand how, we must see clearly the price of avoiding it. Because the hidden problem is not just that you resist silence. The deeper tragedy is that this resistance shapes every part of your life, quietly but relentlessly. It distorts your relationships, your success, your sense of self. It creates consequences you do not even realize you are suffering. And until you see these consequences for what they are, you will never have the courage to rebel against the noise. What happens when you refuse silence? What happens when every quiet moment is filled with noise, external or internal? The tragedy is not always immediate, but it is certain. The unseen consequences creep into every corner of your life, shaping your relationships, your ambitions, your very sense of who you are. First, silence denied is intimacy denied. Relationships depend not on constant words, but on presence. Have you ever sat with someone who cannot stop talking, who fills every space with chatter, as if silence itself would expose something unbearable between you? This is not connection. It is avoidance. True intimacy begins in the quiet moments, the pause before a confession, the shared gaze without words, the unspoken trust that requires no performance. Without silence, love becomes noise, and noise repels. Carl Jung warned that what we refuse to face in ourselves will appear in the people we choose. If you cannot bear your own silence, you will demand noise from others. You will seek partners who distract you, who mirror your restlessness. You will confuse intensity with intimacy, chaos with connection. And so the relationships you long for will collapse, not because love is impossible, but because silence was never allowed to nurture it. Second, silence denied is success distorted. Modern culture celebrates the hustle, the endless grind, the ceaseless pursuit of more. But success without silence becomes compulsion. You work not from vision, but from fear of falling behind. You chase not opportunities, but validation. The result is burnout, a life consumed by doing with no space left for being. The greatest ideas, the deepest innovations, come not from noise, but from quiet reflection. Newton under the apple tree, Jung in his lakeside retreat, Nietzsche walking alone in the Alps. Silence was the womb of genius. Without it, success becomes empty achievement, a tower built on sand. Third, silence denied is identity distorted. The more you fill your life with noise, the less you know who you are. Think of the constant stream of influences, social media voices telling you what to desire, advertisements shaping what you value, cultural scripts defining success. In silence, you might question these. You might ask, do I even want this? Does this life reflect me? But without silence, you accept the noise as your own voice. You chase what others told you to chase. You wear a mask so long that you forget your own face. Psychology names this phenomenon introjection, the unconscious adoption of other people's values and beliefs as your own. Without silence, you never notice it happening. You live a life scripted by someone else, then wonder why you feel hollow. The consequences are not just personal, they are societal. When entire cultures avoid silence, they breed collective restlessness. Aldous Huxley's prophecy becomes reality, a civilization addicted to distractions, incapable of reflection, drowning in stimulation yet starved of meaning. Look around, constant media noise, outrage cycles, political polarization. These are not signs of strength. They are symptoms of a society terrified of silence, because silence would force a reckoning. Silence would expose the emptiness beneath the spectacle. Neuroscience confirms the cost at the biological level. Chronic noise, both external and internal, keeps the nervous system locked in a state of fight or flight. Cortisol floods the body, weakening the immune system, aging the cells. The mind races, unable to rest, unable to repair. Studies show that even 2 minutes of silence can lower blood pressure and regulate breathing more effectively than soothing music. Yet how often do we give ourselves even that? The unseen consequence is that we age faster, get sick more often, and live shorter, more anxious lives, all because we cannot sit in stillness. And then there is the spiritual cost. Silence is the ground of transcendence, the space where the soul hears itself. Every mystical tradition, from Christian monks to Buddhist meditators to Sufi poets, understood this. In silence you touch what cannot be spoken, but in noise you lose this entirely. You become spiritually tone-deaf, unable to sense the deeper currents of existence. The result is not merely atheism but alienation. Life feels flat, mechanical, devoid of depth. You search for transcendence in substances, in experiences, in more noise, but it never satisfies. Perhaps the most devastating unseen consequence is this. Without silence, desire itself becomes corrupted. Instead of desiring from fullness, you desire from lack. You chase because you are empty, not because you are whole. This is why nothing feels enough. Jung believed that the self, the deepest center of being, is magnetic by nature. From silence it radiates, but cut off from silence. You live from the ego, which always grasps, always fears, always hungers. Desire without silence is not attraction, but desperation. And desperation repels everything you long for. Do you see now why the chase never works? Why the more you run after love, the more it runs from you? Why the harder you push for success, the more fragile it feels? Why peace remains elusive, no matter how carefully you design your life? It is because noise breeds resistance. It distorts the signal you send into the world. Imagine 2 magnets. Place them with the same poles facing and they repel. That is the restless mind. It pushes away what it longs for. But flip one magnet, bring silence, and suddenly they snap together with irresistible force. That is the silent mind. It attracts without effort. This is the tragedy of the unseen consequences. You do not realize that your noise is repelling everything you desire. You think you need to do more, try harder, chase faster. But the harder you chase, the stronger the repulsion. And so the question emerges, if noise is the prison, how do you break free? If silence is so powerful, How do you step into it without fear? The answer lies in rebellion. Not against society, not against others, but against the tyranny of your own restless mind. You cannot outthink noise with more noise. You cannot chase peace and expect it to appear. The rebellion begins when you stop playing by the rules of the restless mind and the noisy world that profits from your distraction. But this rebellion is not dramatic in the way you might imagine. It does not look like shouting, breaking, or running away. It begins in stillness. And stillness in a world addicted to chaos is the most radical act you can commit. The first step is paradoxical. You must stop chasing silence itself. Many try to meditate, to sit quietly, to achieve calm. But the very attempt is noise disguised as discipline. They become frustrated when thoughts arise, when silence refuses to come. The rebellion requires a different posture. You do not force silence. You allow it. Jung said, "We cannot change anything until we accept it." The first rebellion is acceptance of the noise, of the restless thoughts, of the discomfort that comes with stillness. When you stop resisting, the noise begins to dissolve on its own. The second step is shadow work. Remember, silence terrifies because it reveals what you have hidden. The rebellion means daring to face it. You sit quietly, and when old griefs or hidden desires surface, you do not run. You look, you name them. You let them exist. In doing so, you reclaim the parts of yourself you once rejected. Jung insisted that integration of the shadow is the path to wholeness. In rebellion, silence becomes your mirror. You face the monster, and in doing so you realize it was never as terrifying as the chase made it seem. The third step is creating sacred spaces of silence. Our culture has colonized every moment with noise. Notifications, entertainment, obligations. The rebel learns to carve out islands of quiet. This may mean a walk without your phone, a morning ritual of stillness, or even 5 minutes of simply sitting with your breath. Neuroscience shows that even short practices of silence rewire the brain, strengthening the prefrontal cortex and calming the nervous system. These moments are not wasted. They are where clarity is born. But rebellion is not just about practices, it is about perspective. Nietzsche said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow." Silence helps you uncover that why. In noise, you confuse other people's values for your own. In silence, you hear the faint voice of your authentic self. Rebellion means choosing that voice over the voices of society. It may lead you to walk away from a career that never felt true, from relationships that were built on distraction, from patterns that only fed the ego. This is not escape. It is liberation. Rebellion also means rejecting the lie that productivity equals worth. The world tells you to be constantly busy, constantly visible, constantly striving. The rebel chooses to withdraw at times, to be invisible, to let stillness nourish action rather than replace it. Paradoxically, those who practice this rebellion often achieve more, because their actions flow from clarity rather than compulsion. History is full of such rebels. Einstein staring out windows, Jung retreating to his tower in Bollingen, monks in cloisters whose silence changed civilizations. Another form of rebellion is found in your relationships. Instead of demanding constant stimulation, conversation, validation, performance, you bring silence into connection. You sit with others in quiet presence and something extraordinary happens. Trust deepens, intimacy grows, respect emerges. Silence communicates what words cannot. I am with you without needing to control you. The rebel shows that attraction is not born from noise, but from the gravity of presence. At the deepest level, rebellion is spiritual. It is saying no to the false gods of noise, money without meaning, relationships without depth, success without soul. Silence reorients you toward the eternal, the ground of being, the self that Jung described. Whether you call it God, the unconscious, or pure awareness, silence reveals a center within you that does not chase because it already is complete. To live from this center is the ultimate rebellion against a world built on lack. But do not mistake rebellion for ease. To sit in silence is to wrestle with yourself. To face the shadow is to feel fear, grief, and anger rise. To turn from the noise of society is to risk misunderstanding, even ridicule. People may call you lazy, strange, antisocial. They will not understand why you are no longer chasing as they do. That is the price of rebellion. Nietzsche warned, the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you rebel with silence, you will feel that struggle. But in that struggle lies your freedom. Practical psychology offers tools for this rebellion. Mindfulness training, not as escape, but as awareness of noise without attachment, breathwork and body awareness, to anchor silence in the nervous system, journaling, to dialogue with the shadow instead of fearing it, digital fasting, to starve the addiction to endless external noise, ritual solitude, to treat silence not as absence, but as sacred encounter. Each of these is not a technique to achieve silence, but an act of rebellion against the tyranny of noise. And what is the reward? Slowly the energy shifts. Instead of chasing, you begin attracting. Instead of pushing people away with desperation, you draw them near with calm presence. Instead of exhausting yourself with meaningless striving, you act from clarity, and success comes naturally. Instead of fearing who you are in silence, you discover that you are more than you imagined. The rebellion is not glamorous, but it is revolutionary. For when you master silence, you no longer play by the world's rules. You radiate a different frequency, one that cannot be bought, manipulated, or faked. And in this frequency, everything you once chased begins to find its way toward you. But there is one final step. Beyond rebellion lies revelation. Beyond the practices and the courage, there is an ultimate truth about silence, one that transforms not only how you live, but how you see reality itself. Imagine that after months, perhaps years of rebellion, you finally sit in silence and no longer feel fear. The racing thoughts still arise, but they no longer own you. The shadow still whispers, but it no longer terrifies you. For the first time, silence does not feel like absence. It feels like presence. And in that presence, a truth emerges so profound that it redefines everything you thought you knew about love, success, and peace. The truth is this: you were never meant to chase. You were always meant to attract. At the deepest level, silence reveals that what you desire is not outside you, running away, but already within you, waiting to be seen. Jung called this the self, the radiant center of being that connects both conscious and unconscious, personal and collective. The self does not chase because it does not lack. It radiates, and in radiating it draws everything into harmony around it. Think of the sun. The planets do not orbit because the sun chases them. They orbit because the sun shines, steady and constant, its gravity undeniable. Silence turns you into such a sun. You no longer run after love, success, or peace. You embody them, and in embodying you attract them. But here is the deeper layer. Silence transforms desire itself. In the restless noise, desire comes from emptiness. I need someone to complete me. I need success to prove my worth. I need peace to escape my suffering. But in silence, desire comes from fullness. I wish to share love because I am love. I wish to create because I am whole. I wish to rest because I already belong. The old hunger dissolves, replaced by a quiet magnetism. What you want begins to notice you, to move toward you, not because you demanded it, but because your presence makes it safe to arrive. Freud believed human beings were driven by unconscious forces of desire and fear. Silence does not erase these forces, but it transforms them. By making the unconscious conscious, you are no longer a puppet. You choose your desires instead of being enslaved by them. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the concentration camps, wrote that even when everything is taken from you, one freedom remains: the freedom to choose your attitude, to shape meaning. Silence is the doorway to that freedom. In silence, you realize I am not what I chase. I am not my noise. I am the stillness that holds it all. Neuroscience echoes this revelation. Studies show that silence literally grows the brain. The hippocampus, the seat of memory and learning, regenerates in quiet. New neural pathways form. Creativity flourishes. Stress hormones drop. The body enters balance. What once felt like wasted time, simply sitting, breathing, being, turns out to be the most productive state of all. Silence is not inactivity. It is the foundation of all effective action and philosophy. It has always pointed here. Nietzsche's amor fati, love of fate, is born of silence, because only in silence can you stop resisting life and begin to embrace it. Sartre's existential freedom, the terrifying realization that you must create your own meaning, becomes liberating in silence, because you no longer seek permission from the noise of society. Schopenhauer's grim truth that endless desire leads only to suffering is transformed in silence, because silence reveals a desireless fullness. Spiritual traditions knew this long before psychology or science. The Buddha attained enlightenment not by chasing but by sitting beneath a tree in silence. The mystics of every faith withdrew into deserts, caves, or monasteries, not to escape life but to enter its depth. They discovered what Jung later echoed in his psychological language: silence is not empty. Silence is full. It is the ground of being itself. So here is the ultimate realization: silence is not a tool. It is not a technique to get love, success, or peace. It is the truth in which love, success, and peace naturally arise. When your mind grows quiet, you see clearly that you were never separate from them. The chase was illusion. The running was a dream. What you longed for has always been circling you, waiting for the storm to clear. Look back at your life for a moment. How many times did what you sought arrive only when you stopped forcing it? How often did love appear when you finally let go of desperation? How often did clarity come in a moment of stillness when you weren't trying to solve anything? These were not coincidences. They were glimpses of the law of silence. The final truth is humbling. Silence does not give you power over the world. It gives you power over yourself. And when you are no longer ruled by noise, the world responds to you differently. People feel your presence and trust it. Opportunities sense your steadiness and approach. Peace enters not as an achievement, but as a homecoming. So what must you do now? Not chase, not strive, not conquer. You must dare to be silent. You must dare to sit in the storm until the storm dissolves. You must dare to meet yourself. Not the mask, not the noise, but the self that has always been waiting. And when you meet it, you will laugh, because you will see the greatest secret. You were never missing anything. You were never broken. You were never meant to run after life. You were meant to be still and let life run toward you. This is why inner silence unlocks love, success, and peace, because silence is not weakness. Silence is gravity. Silence is presence. Silence is the truth, and the truth is this: when the mind is quiet, everything you desire comes closer.